The massive alien vessel hung in Earth's orbit like a metallic moon, its crystalline hull reflecting the blue marble below. The ship was so enormous that it blocked out entire city districts when it passed overhead, casting shadows that plunged millions into artificial twilight. Children pointed at the sky while their parents hurried them indoors, everyone knowing that this moment would change everything. Commander Park Min-ho stood in the United Defense Council chambers, sweat beading on his forehead despite the climate. Control. The holographic display before him showed 12 different alien species, each more terrifying than the last. Some looked like walking nightmares with too many eyes and writhing tentacles. Others appeared as geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. One delegate seemed to be made entirely of flowing liquid metal that shifted and reformed constantly. The lead delegate dominated the center of the projection. It stood 3 meters tall with 6 arms ending in razor-sharp claws, its skin like polished obsidian that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When it spoke, the translation matrices couldn't quite capture the underlying threat in its alien voice, but everyone in the room felt their blood run cold. Humanity has 36 standard hours to evacuate 17 star systems. Your expansion ends here. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. Kim So-young, Earth's chief diplomat, had faced down hostile nations and corporate raiders, but nothing had prepared her for this. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped forward, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. These are sovereign human colonies. We've invested decades building those worlds. Millions of people call them home. You can't just... Your investments. Our forfeit, the creature interrupted, its voice cutting through her words like a blade through paper. We are the Galactic Coalition. We have shattered worlds that defied us. We have enslaved species far more advanced than yours. Species with technology that makes your primitive ships look like stone tools. Comply or face extinction. Behind the diplomatic facade, Admiral Lee Jun-woo studied the tactical displays with growing horror. His fingers moved across the holographic. Controls, pulling up fleet compositions and weapon specifications. The Coalition fleet numbered in the thousands, massive dreadnoughts that could level continents, fighter swarms that moved like deadly clouds, weapons platforms that could crack moons in half. Humanity had barely 300 ships capable of deep space combat, and most of those were converted mining vessels and exploration craft hastily fitted with missile pods. The math was simple and terrifying. It would be like sending paper airplanes against a hurricane. The alien delegate gestured with one of its 6 arms, and the display changed to show footage of previous Coalition conquests, worlds burning from orbit, cities turned to glass by energy, weapons, entire species kneeling in submission before Coalition forces. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who resist. The Vector Confederacy resisted us, the creature continued, its dark eyes reflecting the burning worlds on screen. They had shields that could deflect our weapons. They had ships that moved faster than light itself. Now their homeworld is a monument to their foolishness, a lifeless rock drifting in space. The Zenkari fought us for 7 years with weapons that bent reality itself. Their survivors now serve as laborers in our mining operations. Park Min-ho felt his stomach drop. Each example was worse than the last. Species that had fought with technologies humanity couldn't even dream of, all crushed beneath the Coalition's advance. What hope did Earth have? The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of electronics and the distant rumble of Earth's defense, platforms powering up. Every person in the room knew they were looking at the end of human independence, possibly the end of humanity itself. But then something unexpected happened. When the emergency vote was called, when Earth's leaders were asked whether to surrender their colonies and bow to alien demands, the result surprised everyone, including the aliens monitoring their communications through quantum entanglement. The vote was unanimous. Not a single voice spoke for surrender. Representative after representative stood to speak. "My grandson lives on New Busan," said the Korean delegate. "I won't abandon him." The African Union representative slammed his fist on the table. "We've fought too hard for freedom to give it up now." Even the smallest nations, the ones with no military power at all, voted to resist. The alien delegates watched this display with what might have been confusion. In their experience, primitive species always chose survival over pride. They had expected fear, pleading, desperate attempts to negotiate. Instead, they witnessed something they'd never seen before, an entire species choosing defiance over surrender. Park Min-ho felt a strange calm settle over him as he activated the quantum transmitter. The words came easily, as if he'd been preparing to say them his entire life. Tell your coalition this. Humanity doesn't retreat. We don't surrender our people, and we don't bow to bullies, no matter how big their ships are. The alien delegates' obsidian features twisted into what might have been surprise or rage. So you're making a grave mistake, humans. We offered you mercy. We don't want your mercy, Park Min-ho replied, his voice steady despite the impossible odds. We want our freedom. The transmission ended, leaving Earth to prepare for a war they couldn't possibly win but would fight anyway. The first battle came at Kepler Station, humanity's furthest outpost floating in the darkness between stars. The station looked like a metal flower blooming in space, its solar panels spread wide to catch the faint light from distant suns. It was home to 30,000 people, mostly scientists and their families, studying the strange quantum phenomena that occurred in this region of space. Captain Yoon Da-eun stood on the bridge of her flagship, the destroyer Seoul's Pride, watching the coalition armada drop out of hyperspace like falling stars. 200 vessels of every imaginable shape emerged from the swirling portal of light. Some looked like massive beetles with weapon ports bristling along their shells. Others resembled twisted spears that seemed to bend reality around them. The largest ships defied description entirely, appearing as geometric impossibilities that hurt to look at directly. Da-eun had only 12 frigates under her command, small fast ships originally designed for patrol duty and pirate hunting. Against the coalition fleet, they looked like minnows facing a school of sharks. Her crew was young, many of them fresh from the academy, their faces pale as they watched. The enemy formation spread across their screens. "They're hailing us, Captain," reported Communications Officer Park Sung-min, his voice barely steady. The main screen flickered to life, showing a coalition commander that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider, with 4 glowing eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated head. When it spoke, its mandibles clicked together in a rhythm that the translation software struggled to interpret. "Human vessels, you are hopelessly outmatched. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Continue to resist, and we will make your suffering legendary throughout the galaxy." Da-eun's communications officer looked at her expectantly. The smart play was obvious. Surrender, hope for mercy, live to fight another day. But as she looked at Kepler Station through the viewport, she saw children playing in the observation decks, scientists working in their laboratories, families who had built their lives in this impossible place between the stars. "Tell them to come and take it," Da-eun replied, her voice carrying across the bridge with quiet determination. The coalition commander's mandibles stopped clicking. Perhaps it had expected fear, or desperate negotiations, or the same submission they'd received from countless other species. Instead, it received defiance from what it considered primitive savages. The battle began with a massive energy barrage from the coalition fleet. Beams of coherent light lanced through space, each one capable of vaporizing a city block. Da-eun's frigates scattered like startled birds, their smaller size allowing them to dance between the deadly streams of energy. The Seoul's Pride rolled, hard to port as a plasma bolt passed close enough to melt paint off the hull. "Return fire," Da-eun shouted over the screaming alarms. "Target their command ships." The human missiles were primitive compared to coalition technology, but they were fast and numerous. Da-eun had ordered every available warhead loaded before the battle, turning her ships into flying arsenals. Dozens of missiles streaked toward the enemy formation, weaving through defensive fire like silver snakes. The coalition shields absorbed most of the impacts, but a few missiles found their marks. A beetle-shaped cruiser spun out of formation, atmosphere venting from a hull breach. One of the geometric impossibilities flickered and became slightly more possible as its reality-bending generators failed. But for every hit the humans scored, they took 10 in return. The frigate Daigu's Hope simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. The Incheon runner lasted longer, its captain keeping the ship fighting even as sections of the hull peeled away like flower petals. When the reactor finally breached, the explosion took 2 coalition fighters with it. Hours passed in a deadly dance of fire and metal. Da-Un's remaining ships fought with desperate creativity, using the station's bulk as cover, hiding in the sensor shadows of asteroids, even using their own wreckage as improvised weapons. When the Soul's Pride ran out of missiles, Da-Un ordered the crew to load anything that would fit in the tubes: spare parts, emergency supplies, even the ships. Recreational equipment became projectiles. The Busan Thunder was the first to attempt ramming. Captain Kim Jae-wook's ship had lost engines and weapons, but retained momentum. He aimed his crippled frigate at the largest coalition dreadnought and engaged the emergency thrusters. The impact was spectacular, a flower of destruction that bloomed. Against the enemy's shields, the dreadnought survived, but its shield generators overloaded, leaving it vulnerable. Da-Un saw the opportunity immediately. All ships target the wounded dreadnought, everything we have left. The remaining human vessels converged on the damaged coalition ship like wolves on a wounded elk. They poured their last missiles, their final energy blasts, everything they had into that one target. The dreadnought's hull began to buckle, then crack, then finally explode in a chain reaction that lit up space like a newborn star. When the battle finally ended 6 hours later, Kepler Station was a twisted ruin of metal and ceramic, its beautiful solar panels shredded by weapons fire. The civilian population had been evacuated to the deepest sections, but the station would never function again. Of Da-Un's 12 frigates, only 3 limped away from the battle, their hulls scarred and their crews exhausted. But 47 coalition ships drifted as wreckage among the debris. 47 vessels that would never threaten another human world. The cost had been terrible, but the message was clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. Admiral Lee Jun-woo received the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The tactical display showed the losses in stark detail, but also something the coalition had never seen before. A primitive species that fought beyond all reason, beyond hope, beyond survival itself. Meanwhile, on the mining world of New Seoul, Colonel Han Ji-min was learning that miners made excellent soldiers. The planet's surface was honeycombed with tunnels and shafts that went down for kilometers. When the coalition dropships landed, they found not cowering refugees but armed workers who knew every inch of their underground domain and had turned their industrial equipment into weapons of war. The coalition won the planet, but at a cost they had never imagined possible. 6 months into the war, Lieutenant Kim Tae-hyun crouched in the twisted wreckage of a coalition battlecruiser on the planet Harmony. The massive ship had crashed during the Battle of 3 Moons, its hull split, open like a cracked egg, revealing the alien technology within. Steam still rose from the cooling metal, and strange lights flickered in the darkness of the ship's interior corridors. Tae-hyun's engineering team moved carefully through the debris, wearing protective suits against the toxic atmosphere that leaked from ruptured alien life support systems. The air shimmered with colors that human eyes weren't meant to see, and occasionally they heard sounds that made their skin crawl, like whispers in languages that predated speech itself. "Sir, over here," called Engineer Cho Min-jung, her voice crackling through the comm system. She stood before a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light, each pulse sending waves of energy through conduits that looked like frozen lightning. "I think this is their shield generator." Tae-hyun approached the device with the reverence of an archaeologist, discovering ancient treasure. The crystal was beautiful and terrible, a geometric impossibility that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human minds could comprehend. Energy flowed through it in patterns that defied physics, creating barriers that could stop planet-killing weapons. "The power coupling here," he pointed to where the crystal connected to what looked like a fusion reactor, crossed with a spider web. "It's not that different from our fusion reactors. Look at these energy pathways. They're using quantum tunneling to amplify the power output, but the basic principles are similar to what we use." His team gathered around, their instruments recording every detail. Sergeant Park Dong-woo, a former mechanic who had learned to fix everything from hovercars to orbital platforms, ran his scanner over the alien components. The materials are weird, but the engineering logic makes sense. It's like they're using the same math we do, just with different tools. Engineer Li Yejin carefully photographed the connection points. If we can replicate the quantum field generators using our existing fusion technology, we might be able to create a hybrid system. It won't be as powerful as the original, but it could work. Within weeks, human shipyards across the solar system buzzed with frantic activity. The captured alien technology was dissected, analyzed, and reverse-engineered with a speed that amazed even the humans doing the work. Welders worked around the clock, their torches throwing sparks across hull plates as they installed alien shield generators onto human destroyers. The modifications looked crude, like mechanical parasites grafted onto the sleek lines of human ships, but they worked. The destroyer Guangzhou's Hammer was the first to receive the hybrid shields. Captain Nam Ho-jin watched nervously as his engineering team activated the alien technology for the first time. The crystalline generators hummed with power, creating a shimmering barrier around the ship that bent light in impossible ways. "Shields at 60% of estimated coalition standard," reported the chief engineer. "Not perfect, but a hell of a lot better than what we had before." Soon, human fleets began appearing with jury-rigged alien technology bolted, welded, and sometimes literally taped to their hulls. Destroyers sprouted coalition shield generators like technological mushrooms. Fighters carried alien energy weapons that fired beams of coherent plasma instead of traditional missiles. Transport ships had been modified with captured FTL drives that allowed them to jump between star systems in ways that made coalition scouts do double takes on their sensors. Captain Oh Soo-jin commanded the first hybrid squadron to see combat, leading 12 modified frigates against a coalition patrol near the Vega system. Her flagship, the Soul's Vengeance, bristled with alien technology. The ship looked like a patchwork of human engineering and coalition science, beautiful in its crude functionality. The coalition patrol consisted of 6 sleek vessels that moved through space like metal dolphins, their hulls reflecting starlight in hypnotic patterns. They had expected to encounter the same primitive human ships they had been destroying for months. Instead, their sensors detected something impossible. "Commander," reported the coalition sensor operator, its voice a harmony of clicking sounds, "the human vessels are equipped with our shield technology, and those weapon signatures, those are our plasma cannons." The coalition patrol commander, a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a tree, studied the tactical display with growing confusion. How is this possible? No species has ever reverse-engineered our technology so quickly. The Vector Confederacy studied our shields for decades and never achieved adaptation. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Coalition had experienced. Human ships that should have been destroyed by the first volley absorbed the energy blasts with shields that shimmered like aurora. When the humans returned fire, they used Coalition weapons that had been modified with human targeting systems, creating hybrid weapons that were somehow more accurate than the originals. Soo-jin's squadron fought with the desperation of the outnumbered, but also with the confidence that came from using the enemy's own technology against them. The Soul's Vengeance danced between enemy fire, its human engines providing maneuverability, while alien shields absorbed the damage. When Soo-jin finally got a clear shot at the Coalition flagship, her modified plasma cannon punched through enemy shields like they were made of paper. The Coalition patrol was destroyed, but not before they transmitted a priority message back to their command. The message was simple but terrifying. The humans were learning. Coalition command centers across the galaxy buzzed with frantic activity. As reports flooded in from multiple fronts, human ships appearing with Coalition technology, human weapons firing alien energy beams, human shields that could deflect attacks. That should have vaporized entire fleets. How are they adapting so quickly? The Coalition commanders asked each other in emergency sessions. They had conquered hundreds of species over millennia. Some had been more advanced than humanity, with technology that manipulated time itself or reshaped matter at the molecular level. But none had ever reverse-engineered Coalition technology, with such speed and creativity. The Zek-Nari High Command, creatures of pure energy that existed in crystalline matrices, studied the tactical reports with growing alarm. "The humans are not simply copying our technology," one observed, its voice like the sound of breaking glass. "They are improving it. Their hybrid systems are crude but effective, in some cases more effective than our original designs." Admiral Lee Jun-woo stood in the war room on Lunar Base, studying the tactical reports that flooded in from across human space. The holographic displays showed human fleets that looked like mechanical monsters, bristling with alien technology and human determination. He smiled, the first genuine smile he'd worn since the war began. "We're not just fighting them anymore," he told his staff officers. "We're learning from them, and that's something they never prepared for." The war was changing in ways that no one had anticipated. Humanity wasn't just refusing to retreat or refusing to surrender. They were evolving, adapting, becoming something new with each battle. The coalition had expected to face primitives with simple weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every encounter, that learned from every defeat, and that turned their own technology against them. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the coalition began to feel something they had never experienced before: uncertainty about the outcome of a war. 18 months into the conflict, Admiral Lee Jun-woo stood before the War Council in the underground bunkers of Lunar Base. The holographic table showed the grim reality of humanity's situation. Red zones marked lost colonies, yellow indicated contested systems, and the small patches of green representing secure human space were shrinking every day. The coalition's relentless advance had pushed humanity back to their core worlds, and every military expert agreed they had perhaps 6 months before Earth itself came under direct assault. Jun-woo looked around the table at the faces of humanity's finest military minds. General Choi Ye-jin, scarred from the defense of New Busan. Captain Yoon Da-eun, who had survived 3 ship destructions and now commanded a captured coalition dreadnought. Major Park Yoon-woo, whose special operations teams had been conducting impossible missions behind enemy lines. All of them bore the weight of a war that seemed unwinnable. "Operation Thunder," Jun-woo announced, his voice cutting through the tense silence. The holographic display shifted to show star charts of coalition space, deep behind enemy lines, where no human ship had ever traveled. "We stop defending and start attacking their homeworlds." The silence that followed was deafening. General Choi Ye-jin was the first to speak, her voice carefully controlled. "Sir, that's suicide. Their core systems are protected by orbital defense platforms that could shatter moons. Their home fleets number in the tens of thousands. We'd be sending our people to certain death by fleets that are here fighting us," Jun-woo interrupted, gesturing at the tactical display. "Look at the deployment patterns. The coalition has committed 90% of their military assets to our front lines. They've stripped their home defenses to maintain their offensive operations. While they're busy conquering our outer colonies, their homeworlds are more vulnerable than they've been in centuries." Captain Da-eun leaned forward, studying the intelligence reports. Her ship, the former coalition dreadnought now renamed Soul's Revenge, was a testament to humanity's ability to adapt. The massive vessel had been captured during the Battle of Kepler's Edge, its alien crew overwhelmed by human boarding parties who fought with the desperation of cornered animals. Now it flew under human colors, its coalition weapons turned against its former masters. "The jump drive technology we've reverse-engineered," Da-eun said slowly. "It could get us behind their lines undetected. Their sensor networks are designed to watch for threats coming from our territory, not from within their own space." Major Park Yoon-woo nodded grimly. His special forces had been using captured coalition stealth technology to infiltrate enemy positions for months. "My teams have identified 12 critical systems, administrative centers, industrial complexes, civilian population hubs. If we hit them simultaneously—" "You're talking about targeting non-combatants," General Choi interrupted, her voice sharp with disapproval. "That goes against everything we stand for." Jun-woo's expression hardened. "They've been targeting our civilians from day one. Every colony they've conquered, every mining station they've destroyed, Every transport ship they've vaporized. They made this a total war. We're just finally fighting it like one." The debate that followed was intense, but brief. Everyone in the room knew they were discussing humanity's last desperate gambit. Conventional warfare had failed. Defensive strategies had failed. Even their technological adaptations were only slowing the coalition advance, not stopping it. Operation Thunder was madness, but it might be the only kind of madness that could save the human race. 3 weeks later, Captain Yoon Da-un stood on the bridge of the Soul's Revenge as it prepared for the longest jump in human history. Around a fleet of 30 vessels prepared for Operation Thunder. Half were captured coalition ships, their hulls painted with human insignias, but their technology still alien and mysterious. The other half were human vessels, so heavily modified with coalition technology that they barely resembled their original designs. "Jump coordinates locked," reported Navigation Officer Kim Sung-ho, his hands dancing over controls that were part human engineering and part alien science. "Destination? Altair System, Coalition Administrative Sector 7. Da-un felt her stomach clench. The Altair System was the Coalition's administrative heart, home to the massive orbital habitats where their civilian bureaucracy lived and worked. Billions of non-combatant aliens who had never fired a shot in anger, never seen a battlefield, never imagined that war could reach into their peaceful lives. "All ships report ready for jump," came the voice of Communications Officer Park Jimin. "Execute," Da-un ordered. The jump drive engaged with a sound like reality tearing. Space twisted around the human fleet, colors shifting through spectrums that human eyes weren't designed to perceive. For a moment that lasted eternity, the ships existed nowhere and everywhere simultaneously, traveling through dimensions that folded space like origami. Then they emerged in the Altair system, appearing like ghosts in the heart of coalition space. The orbital habitats stretched before them like artificial moons, their surfaces gleaming with cities that housed trillions of coalition civilians. Massive ring structures rotated slowly, generating artificial gravity for species that had evolved under different suns. Crystal spires reached between the habitats, connected by transport tubes that carried millions of commuters between their homes and workplaces. "My God," whispered Tactical Officer Lee Min-jun, "there are so many of them." The Coalition's home defense fleet was pathetic compared to their frontline forces. A few dozen patrol craft, some orbital defense platforms that looked more ceremonial than functional, and a handful of ancient dreadnoughts that probably hadn't fired their weapons in anger for centuries. They had never needed strong defenses, because no enemy had ever penetrated this deep into Coalition space. The human fleet spread out in attack formation, their weapons powering up as they surrounded the orbital habitats. Da-un opened a channel to the Coalition Defense Commander, a creature that looked like a walking flower made of metal petals. "This is Captain Yoon Da-un of the human fleet," she announced. "Your civilian populations are now under our protection. Any attempt to interfere will result in immediate defensive action." The Coalition Commander's petals quivered with what might have been rage or terror. "You cannot threaten non-combatants. This violates every law of civilized warfare." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human strike teams appeared in Coalition core systems. Major Park Yun-woo materialized in the Vega industrial complex with a fleet of modified stealth ships surrounding the massive manufacturing stations that produced Coalition military equipment. Commander Hong Jae-sung struck at the Centauri agricultural centers, where food was grown for dozens of Coalition worlds. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. For millennia, the Coalition had waged war safe in the knowledge that their homes were untouchable. They conquered other species' worlds while their own civilians lived in perfect peace. The concept that war could reach into their sacred spaces, could threaten their families and loved ones, was so alien to them that their command structure nearly collapsed from shock. "You cannot threaten non-combatants," the Coalition Admiral screamed over subspace communications, his voice breaking with panic. Major Park Yun-woo, now orbiting a Coalition nursery world where their young were raised in vast educational complexes, replied with cold precision, "You started this war. You chose to make it total when you targeted our colonies, our miners. Our scientists, our children, now live with the consequences. For the first time in millennia, the Coalition faced an enemy willing to match their brutality, to escalate beyond their comfort zone, to fight a war without the artificial limitations they had always assumed would protect their own people. The psychological shock was devastating, rippling through their command structure like a virus, paralyzing decision-making and shattering the confidence that had sustained their empire for thousands of years. The real war was just beginning. The Treaty of Terra Station was signed in the strangest circumstances in galactic history. Human fleets still held Coalition civilians hostage in 12-star systems, while Coalition forces occupied half of human space. The massive space station, hastily constructed in neutral territory between the two forces, became the unlikely birthplace of peace. Admiral Lee Jun-woo walked slowly through the station's corridors, his left arm in a bioregeneration sleeve from his last battle injury, his face bearing scars from 3 years of impossible warfare. The station buzzed with activity as diplomats, military officers, and translators from dozens of species worked frantically to hammer out an agreement that both sides could accept. The main conference hall was a marvel of hasty engineering, designed to accommodate species that breathed different atmospheres, communicated through light patterns, or existed as energy beings. Environmental suits and translation matrices filled the space with a constant hum of machinery, keeping everyone alive and able to understand each other. Jun-woo took his place at the circular table, looking across at Coalition commanders he had been trying to kill just weeks before. The lead Coalition delegate was Admiral Zekthara, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns when she was agitated. Beside her sat General Mordun, whose tentacles twitched nervously as he reviewed the treaty documents through sensory patches on his skin. "You wanted to see what humans do when cornered," Jun-woo addressed the assembled aliens, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had seen too much death. "Now you know. We adapt, we endure, and we never surrender. But we also know when to stop fighting." The words hung in the air, translated into dozens of alien languages simultaneously. Some Coalition delegates shifted uncomfortably, their various forms of body language betraying their continued amazement at humanity's refusal to accept defeat, even when facing impossible odds. Ambassador Kim So-young stepped forward, her diplomatic uniform bearing the insignia of United Earth, but also small pins representing every human colony that had fallen during the war. She had aged decades in 3 years, her hair now streaked with grey, but her voice remained strong. "The terms are simple," she announced, activating a holographic display that showed the proposed treaty in visual formats adapted for different alien sensory systems. Humanity joins the Coalition as an equal member, not as a vassal species. Our existing colonies remain sovereign human territory. Our military forces maintain independence under human command. Admiral Zekthara's crystalline form flared with colors that indicated skepticism, and in exchange, human military doctrine, engineering innovations, and adaptive technologies become available to Coalition forces, Kim continued. "Our scientists will work with yours. Our engineers will share their techniques. Our warriors will train with yours." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. Usually, conquered species signed treaties of surrender while their worlds burned. Instead, this was a negotiation between equals who had bloodied each other badly enough to earn mutual respect. General Mordun's tentacles coiled as he spoke through his translation matrix. "Your species has proven unusually resilient. The psychological profiles we developed were clearly inadequate." Captain Oh Soo-jin, newly promoted after her performance commanding hybrid human Coalition technology, entered the discussion. "We learned from you too. Your shield technology, your FTL drives, your energy weapons. We took your tools and made them better." The final signing ceremony took place in the station's central chamber, a vast space with transparent walls that showed the stars beyond. Representatives from both sides approached the ceremonial table, each using their species' traditional method of formal agreement. Humans signed with physical writing instruments, while coalition delegates used everything from bioluminescent secretions to quantum entanglement patterns. 3 months later, Captain Oh Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the patrol vessel Harmony's Edge, watching her mixed crew work together with professional efficiency. Her first officer was Lieutenant Commander Veltar, a coalition engineer whose 6 arms could operate multiple control stations simultaneously. Her navigation officer was Ensign Park Dong-min, a human who had learned to interpret coalition stellar cartography systems. "Sensor contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported the tactical officer, a being of living metal whose consciousness existed in the ship's computer systems. "Unknown vessel, possibly pirates." Soo-jin smiled, feeling the familiar rush of command. "All stations, prepare for intercept. Let's show these pirates what human coalition cooperation looks like." The patrol ship accelerated smoothly, its hybrid engines combining human engineering with coalition quantum technology. The weapon systems powered up, mixing human missile batteries with alien energy cannons, the shields activated using technology that neither species could have developed alone. In the engineering sections, coalition technicians worked alongside human mechanics, marveling at humanity's ability to jury-rig solutions from spare parts and duct tape. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting their technology, making it elegant and efficient. Humans had spent decades making technology that worked when everything else failed. "Your people's improvisational abilities are remarkable," Veltar commented, watching engineer Kim Tae-jin repair a power coupling using components from 3 different systems. "We would have required a complete replacement. You simply make it work with what you have." The war had ended not with conquest, but with mutual recognition. The coalition had learned that some species couldn't be broken, only bargained with. They had expected to face primitives who would surrender at the first show of overwhelming force. Instead, they found beings who grew stronger under pressure, who turned every defeat into a lesson, who refused to accept that any fight was hopeless. Humanity had learned they weren't alone in the universe, but also that being alone didn't mean being weak. They had earned their place among the stars, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through sheer bloody-minded determination to survive and thrive regardless of the odds. Admiral Jun-woo often stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching human and alien ships patrolling together through the solar system. The sight still amazed him. Coalition dreadnoughts flying in formation with human destroyers, their crews sharing tactics and techniques that had been deadly secrets just months before. The cost had been terrible. Millions dead on both sides, worlds devastated, entire star systems scarred by warfare. New Seoul was still rebuilding from its occupation. Kepler Station would never be the same. The memorial walls on Earth now bore the names of heroes who had died in battles across the galaxy. But humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had forced the galaxy's greatest power to accept them as equals, not through superior technology or ancient bloodlines, but through the simple refusal to give up. They had proven that determination could be as powerful as any weapon, that adaptation could overcome any technological disadvantage, that some spirits simply could not be broken. The real war hadn't been about territory or resources or even survival. It had been about proving that humanity belonged among the stars, that they had the right to exist as free beings in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors. That war was won not on any battlefield, but in the moment when the coalition looked at humanity and saw not primitives to be conquered, but equals to be respected. In the end, that recognition was worth every sacrifice, every loss, every impossible. Battle fought against overwhelming odds. Humanity had taken their place among the stars, and they had done it on their own terms. The end.